Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So this week's build is going to be a little bit different. So the more I worked on this character's backstory, the more I realized how closely the story I was creating simply resembled Gale's story. And so I think this week we will be making a build for our favorite wizard. This works really well as a build for him if you're playing him or if he's simply in your party. Personally, I prefer having him in my party with this build as I like to interact with him and play out his story, enjoying the incredible work of the voice actors and animators. As such, I will note a few story beats, however for this build the story will be a little lighter as I want Gale's story to shine through and I don't want to spoil anything. Now, that aside, I really like the idea of being a transmutation wizard, and that is the core idea of this build, being an incredibly intelligent, prodigiously so, and being able to see and tap into the weave like few others, altering the world around you. You know, the whole water into wine, rocks into gold type alteration. Unfortunately, the transmutation wizard subclass feature is, well, useless is a strong word. I strongly believe that consumables are very potent in this game. However, this ability is the type of ability that you want on like a camp follower or something like that, and not a mainstay in your party. Therefore, we will be continuing with the transmuter theme of the build, but we'll be taking a different approach. We will only take spells that alter the properties of ourselves, others, or surfaces. This could be anything from altering time, strengthening objects, or changing a surface from grass to fire, for example. Finally, we will be taking a different subclass, and you might think this is a stretch, but I think you could say that we're even able to alter fate itself. Okay, so usual disclaimers. This is a concept first, optimized second style build, building around a concept rather than the best possible damage. In fact, this character today has a focus on controlling the battlefield, and while you can still dish out some decent damage, especially in the later levels, this build will primarily be a utility and support caster. This build looks like it should be a heap of fun to play though, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, let's get on to the build, level by level. Okay, so character creation, as mentioned for this build, we are starting with either origin story Gale, or just whenever you pick him up in game. If you are not playing as Gale, the order of these level ups may change slightly, or you may have to respec him once you get the option. I'm going to assume you are playing him as an origin character going forward. And so what choices do you get with origin characters? Well, firstly, you are a human wizard. We can't change those, and we may have to suspend disbelief for a level here, as if you are following the backstory from the short that I posted linked above, you will know that this character was raised in a monastery and is effectively already a cleric of sorts. I like to think for Gale that he was raised in a temple of Mistra and was taught worship and the value of knowledge. As you can probably see where this is going, I would like to start as a cleric and a wizard on Gale. However, we will just have to pick up a single level in cleric on level 2. For now, move on to our cantrips. Now, I do want to add a few restrictions here for myself at least with this build, or I could just end up being a generic wizard build. Firstly, damage can only be dealt by spells that create surfaces or CC the enemy in some way, and that fits the theme. Secondly, we do not utilize illusions, granting only temporary deceptions or tricks. We completely alter the thing itself from one form to another. So no illusion spells. And finally, I don't really love the idea of transmutation or alteration magic affecting another individual's subconscious. So I kind of want to avoid spells like sleep and calm emotions, things like that, and keep it to more of a physical alteration, or in some cases affecting the weave itself, but not what's going on inside someone else's head. Okay, so back to cantrips. Transmutation is grounded in utility. However, we can see some damaging spells as altering the attributes of our enemies, and we likely want to have at least one offensive mainstay. So, in this case, Ray of Frost, slowing our enemies down. Next, changing the properties of an object to emit light is an easy choice as Gale does not currently have dark vision, and Blade Ward, strengthening your body to become more resistant to physical attacks. For level 1 spells, Longstrider, Featherfall, and Enhanced Leap are all great choices for transmuters, but I also really like the idea of utilizing ground effects, changing the properties of the ground from one thing to another. So Chromatic Orb is a great pickup for that. Grease is also a good choice. Then strengthening again, I really like Shield and Mage Armor here, so pick what you like out of those options. Next for our ability scores, and we have no real dump stats for this character. Strength is at 10, Dexterity 12, Constitution 14, Intelligence 14 plus 2 therefore 16 as this is your main spellcasting modifier, Wisdom 10, and Charisma 13 plus 1 therefore 14. Gale does have a certain charm about him, and I really wanted to reflect that, giving him a slightly higher Charisma score than Dexterity. However, it is better, statistically speaking, to go with 14 Dexterity here, and if you're playing on Tactician, I would look at dumping Strength and increasing that Constitution a bit higher. However, your Charisma will pay itself off time and time again if you are looking to use Gale for dialogue options. Finally, for your proficiencies, you have Arcana and History from your background, which is really fitting. And I like Persuasion, Insight, and Investigation here. Okay, level 1 done, Ray of Frost your way off the ship and on to level 2. Okay, so level 2, and we do have to take a quick step backwards in time. I know we're breaking the thematic progression, but to be fair, he was a cleric before he was a wizard. So if we want to get our backstory correct and have better dialogue options down the line, we have to do it now. So we are taking a single level dip into cleric here, and we are going with the knowledge domain, which I think fits Gale perfectly. This subclass gives us a deity to start with, and we are of course choosing Mystra, the goddess of magic. I think Gale and Isabel might get along really well. If you know, you know. Next, we get to choose our cantrips, and Cleric offers us 3 great options for a support caster here. Maybe when we were younger, we engaged in our studies of the divine, and we had a moment where we touched the weave in a way that affected the fate of another training cleric, causing him to change one of their answers on a quiz from the wrong answer to a right one. You realize you are altering fate, only in a small way, to become a success, and our abilities have only become more potent with time, as guidance of course is our first choice here. The quintessential support spell, giving our allies plus 1d4 to ability checks. Adding to that, we have resistance, giving a target a d4 for saving throws. Finally, thaumaturgy, granting advantage on intimidation and performance checks. I really love the fate angle, and it's going to get even more potent going forwards. Next, we get expertise in 2 abilities, and given the bookworm that Gale is, we are taking Arcana and History. Finally, we get 2 spells given to us for choosing the knowledge domain, Sleep and Command. I won't be using these spells as per the does not affect enemies' emotions and subconscious rule. However, if you want to, go ahead. Finally, we do get to prepare 1 cleric spell. Now, I love Bless on this character, however, you will find there are a lot of spell options going forwards that require your concentration. Having Bless, which is a concentration spell, may not be your best option here. We also don't find much use for our bonus action in early levels, so what I suggest instead, Healing Word. For a ranged heal to get allies up in a pinch, usable as a bonus action and able to be upcast. If you really don't like Healing Word, Create option is also very thematic and potentially quite useful with your Chromatic Orb. On to level 3, and we are going back to Wizard now. So as a level 2 Wizard, we get to choose our subclass, and as some of you may have guessed, we are going Divination, as we peer through time itself and sculpt the future. So as a Divination Wizard, we get the Divination Savant, like all wizards, and we can scribe into our spellbook spells of that category for cheaper, which won't really affect us much as there are only 6 spells in the game that are that category. However, we also gain the reason we are here, Portent. Now, this ability is amazing, if a little confusing. Every time we long rest, we roll 2 d20s, and the results of those 2 rolls become our Portent dice for the day. These die can be used to change the result of any attack roll, saving throw done by yourself, allies, or enemies. For example, say I roll a 16 and a 2 after a long rest. Then my enemy attacks me as soon as I leave camp and does a critical hit that would almost down me in one shot. I can change that attack roll to a 2, meaning the attack will never hit me. This can also work in the reverse. If a crucial spell needs to hit an enemy and it misses, you can change that roll to a 16 and now it hits. Hope that's clear enough. Let's move on. We also gain 2 spells on this level, and we could take Find Familiar here. Gale does have a Tressum called Tara. However, you can only summon a cat with this spell, not a cat with wings. So I'll leave that up to you. Also, Expeditious Retreat and Featherfall are options here. We really just need to get to the next level to get our level 2 spells at this point. So, level 4, and this is really where we want to be. There are a plethora of spells here for us to choose from. So many, in fact, I'll just list them, and we're not going to take all of them, but I'll go over a few of them during level ups. First, Web, Ray of Enfeeblement, Misty Step, Knock, Hold Person, Enlarge Reduce, Dark Vision, Blindness, and Arcane Lock. All of these spells fit, and they have a bunch of uses. For me, right now, I can only take 2 though, so I really like Hold Person, slowing your enemy down to the point that they are locked in place. Paralyzed. Most of your early enemies are humanoids, so this is really helpful here. Next is really a choice between Misty Step and Web. I like the idea of altering the ground beneath your enemy's feet to become sticky strands of ensnaring webs, so that's probably what I'd go with here, giving you your first grade CC options for AoE and the single target. On level 5, we gain more level 2 spells, and we are going to opt for a buff for our frontliner that doubles as a control spell in Enlarge Reduce. Enlarge changes the size of the target to be larger, granting it a bonus d4 on strength-based weapon damage and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. This means they can shove larger targets now and resist being shoved by smaller targets. Alternatively, reduce the size of the target, reducing damage by a d4 and giving disadvantage on strength checks and saving throws. This is not only for enemies though, as you can potentially use this to fit through small holes or access secret paths that are otherwise not available. Next, for our second spell, we will take Misty Step here, as we didn't pick it up last level and it will be great for our survivability. We also gain a cantrip on this level, and this one might be a bit difficult to justify as there are no clear choices here for a transmutation style magic. I think there's an argument here for Shocking Grasp and Poison Spray, but we're just going to pick up Shocking Grasp here for those times you are up close to enemies involuntarily and you want to do some damage and also disable their reaction for a turn so you can move without taking an attack of opportunity. Finally, on this level, we are a 4th level wizard, and so we get a feat. I love the irony of this. As we are struggling desperately with a Mind Flare tadpole in our head and a Netherese orb threatening to destroy everything around us, you are still able to touch the weave enough to alter your own fate or the enemy's, as we are taking the lucky feat here. Now this is a fun little feat, and it works alongside our Portent die really well, as we get 3 luck points per long rest, and we use these luck points in order to gain advantage on attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws. Alternatively, we can use the points to force our enemy to reroll their attack. Not as reliable as Portent, and I will say that I have rerolled an enemy's attack into a crit once, but man can you weave fate now. Level 6, and we have level 3 spells now. Some more great options, and I love playing a wizard for this reason. You just get so many great spells to pick from. We get 2 spells at this level, and we are taking level 3 spells, but I urge you not to forget about your level 2 spells here. You have 3 level 3 spell slots and 3 level 2 spell slots at this level. So try to snag some of those great level 2 spells that you missed here if you want them. Time, Fate, the Weave. These things are slowly becoming your playthings now, as you manipulate your enemies and bolster your allies equally. This level, we are taking Slow and Haste, arguably 2 of the most powerful spells in the game. Slow lets you choose up to 6 targets and affect them with the Slow status effect. This is an incredible effect, halving their movement speed, reducing their armor class and dexterity saving throws by 2, makes them choose between an action or bonus action and not both in their turn, and they can only make one attack even if they can multi-attack. If they cast a spell, it might be delayed until their next turn, effectively taking 2 turns to cast. Whew, that is a crazy effect and definitely in theme. Alright, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Haste, granting a targeted ally the hastened effect. This gives the opposite. +2 armor class and dex saving throws, double movement speed, and they can take an additional action on their turn. Both effects are really potent, however they can't be used together as they both require concentration. Also, it's important to point out for haste that when the spell ends, or if you lose concentration, your target becomes lethargic, losing a whole turn with no action, bonus action, reaction, or movement. So if you are hastening an ally, position yourself wisely so you don't get targeted by enemies, or make use of your luck points and portent. Okay, halftime. So firstly, I just want to mention that despite everything going on with the build, if you are looking for the quintessential wizard build throwing fireballs and dealing a bunch of damage, this isn't the right build. You will likely not enjoy the slow, calculated playstyle that this build requires. That said, I am currently playing this build on Tactician and having a great time. Alternatively, chuck some damage spells in there if you want. You don't need to follow my self-imposed restrictions. Secondly, you might find that if you try to play the build that you don't have anything to do with your bonus action, other than Healing Word, and it feels like a bit of a waste. So, early levels, I will recommend that you start to delve into Alchemy. I know, ironic since I ragged on Transmutation Wizard at the start, I know. However, chugging potions can be a good use of your bonus action in combat, and there are a lot of great early potions out there that you can craft. For example, you can get access to the effects of the haste spell on this character way earlier than this, with the Potion of Speed, lasting 3 turns and not requiring a spell slot. This potion only requires a hyena ear and any salt. It's really easy to craft, and it might be a good way to cast a few spells in the same turn. Also, before we get into a few items to pick up on your travels, let's talk about spell scrolls quickly. There are a few spells not available to wizards, although as a wizard, if you find a scroll for a spell that you really want, you can always learn that spell for gold. There are a few spells like Heat Metal or Spike Growth, for example, that could work really well and feel incredibly thematic if you come across them, either from merchants or via looting. Finally, let's go over some items that you can get in Act 1 or 2 that could be really good. This is not an exhaustive list, and it's just items that I've come across. Vivacious Cloak is great if you need a bit more sticking power on the front lines. Spellcrux Amulet is good for getting a spell slot back. You don't even need to leave it equipped, just chuck it on, get your spell slot back, and then remove it again if you want. After that, maybe chuck on Amulet of Misty Step and use that to gain another prepared spell slot back, since this will always be prepared for you. The Whispering Promise will give you a free bless on yourself when you chuck out a heal in combat. Morning Frost will add a little bit of extra cold damage when you need to use Topple for some reason, and it will also give you a higher chance of chilling your target with Ray of Frost. Braces of Defense will be great early before you get any decent armor. Boots of Striding will be amazing for not getting shoved, knocked down while concentrating. Finally, Knowledge Cleric does give you medium armor proficiency, and Adamantine Scale Mail isn't too challenging to get. However, if you do want to keep your wizard in a robe, I totally get it. Okay, back to the build. So I feel like we are starting to feel the weave even more strongly now, as our full might is beginning to return to us. We are far from the heights of our power before we fell from grace, but we are certainly at our strongest since then. Although as your power grows, the orb in your chest grows ever hungrier, and you don't know if you'll be able to contain its power for long, and you have to find a cure soon. At level 7, we take another level in Wizard, and we are a level 6 Wizard now. We get our second subclass feature, Expert Divination. Now this feature is a bit funky. It requires some interaction to work, but I kind of like how it gives the fulfilling a prophecy vibe. Basically, it gives you another portent each long rest. Also, after each short rest, you'll be given 3 prophecies. These prophecies could be used to help action on an ally, or cast an abjuration spell, things like that. When you fulfill one of these prophecies, you get one of your portent dice back. You can fulfill all 3 and get all 3 of them back each short rest. This is incredible in terms of mechanical advantage. However, the way of getting them back can leave you a little frustrated at times because it's completely random. Either really easy, like just cast a cantrip, or really difficult, like killing a certain type of enemy. Just work with what you have and take the extra rerolls when you get them. Between this and lucky, your enemies won't even be able to hit you. Next on this level, we get a 4th level spell slot and 2 level 3 spells. Don't forget about that 4th level spell slot. It could be really useful. You only have 4 spells that can make use of it. Hold Person, targeting 3 enemies at 4th level. Chromatic Orb, increasing its damage by 3d8. Counterspell, Patience, I'm getting there. And Flight, granting an additional target the ability to fly. Right, so speaking of, we are taking Flight at this level. So many great spells, and I just really love this one. Changing your body or an ally's to sprout wings. I think this is really on point thematically. Oh, and I think there's a mod that gives the flight spell wings, in case you were wondering. However, it was a toss-up here, as it was between this or Blink, another fun spell. However, Blink does break your concentration if you enter the ethereal plane, so it's kind of a no-go, unfortunately. Also, on this level, as mentioned, we get Counterspell, and this might be a bit of a stretch, but I'm really leaning into the Altering Fate aspect here. This spell is great, allowing us to completely negate a spell cast by an enemy of 3rd level or lower. And if it's higher than 3rd level, we can match that spell's level with our counterspell to negate it. That 4th level spell slot might come in real handy. Now, I think we've been focusing a bit too much on the Altering Fate aspect of the character over the last few levels, and while I really like the angle and think it fits with the whole you wanting to understand the nature of everything aspect, it's not enough of the transmuting aspect of the build. And so on level 8, we are returning to the roots of the build. And there is no better time to do so, as we get another 4th level spell slot and 4th level spells. I'm sure some of you have guessed that we are taking Polymorph here, the quintessential transmutation spell. Of course, this spell has been severely nerfed from its original D&D form, which is sad to see. However, it is still a fantastic universal single target shutdown, which, if they fail to save, they are stuck for 5 turns. There is no turn-by-turn save for this one, just damage and concentration. This makes it worth taking for those times that Hold Person can't hit the target because it's not a humanoid. Next, we can take Stone Skin on this level, granting an ally resistance to all non-magical damage as long as your concentration holds, which is another great option. Just a note here before we move on as well, I feel like I should have mentioned this in halftime. However, you may have noticed a lot of these spells require concentration, and they are all of your level 2, 3, and 4 spells, with the exception of Misty Step and Counterspell. While you will always have Chromatic Orb to upcast at whatever level you choose, and Ray of Frost and Shocking Grasp, you may find yourself wanting to do more with your action each turn, as these great concentration spells are usually set and forget. And to be realistic, often in a fight, it is more likely to be slow or haste that you are using, unless you need single target lockdown, or out of combat flight. So you might want to forego Flight, Stone Skin, or Polymorph for a Fireball or a Lightning Bolt, or even an Ice Storm, especially if you took Create Water on level 2, or if you have an ally to create it for you. With that said, on to level 9, and we get 2 more spells here and a 5th level spell slot. Don't forget to upcast. Now, while level 4 spells still have some great options, I don't think any of them fit that well with the character. So, we are taking a chance to go back and pick up some great spells that we missed along the way. I'm going Arcane Lock and Remove Curse here. There are a few moments in the campaign that you will be incredibly grateful for Remove Curse. And Arcane Lock, my god, what an underrated spell. This allows you to pull off so many sneaky maneuvers. I have made several fights a lot easier on myself by pulling enemies through a door and then locking it, splitting the opponents I'm facing in half. Finally, on this level, we get a feat, and while I really want Resilience here to get Constitution saving throw proficiency, we have delayed increasing our intelligence long enough, and our saving throws are starting to suffer. So let's bump that to 18. Now, we have reached level 10, and I feel like the orb in your chest is starting to make strange things happen around you whenever you tap into the weave. Your tampering with fate is starting to break down the world around you, and the orb senses it and is accelerating it. As we are taking Sorcerer levels now. Now you may be thinking I'm a little bit mad here. Sorcerer is a charisma-based spellcaster, and we have a pretty average charisma score. That is correct. However, we are not here for the spells. In fact, we aren't even going to talk about them. Take whatever you like, we probably won't use them, other than maybe the cantrips. Being a full spellcasting class, we don't lose spellcasting progression though. So we still finish the game with level 6 spell slots to upcast, and what we are here for on this level is Wild Magic and Tides of Chaos. This feels so incredibly fitting for the progression of this build, as your potency as a spellcaster has returned and increased. You have been able to increase your spell's accuracy and make yourself even more versatile. When you do, however, magic surges all around you and you feel the threads of the world breaking apart. You must make a choice now. Fracture the world in hopes of finding a cure to maybe repair the damage you do after the fact, or find a way, the best way, to go out with a bang. Okay, so flavor aside, Tides of Chaos gives us advantage on our next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. If you use it, it increases the chance of triggering your next feature, Wild Magic, which happens randomly when we cast a spell of level 1 or higher, with a chance of several effects. The chance of triggering is 5% and goes up to 45% when we use Tides of Chaos. There are a range of effects that can occur from this, more than I can list here, but some include taking an extra action on your turn, each creature within 9 meters becomes blinded, turn the floor into thorns, turn yourself into a sheep, or spawn a water puddle. There are plenty more. It can be incredible or infuriating at the same time, and I absolutely love it. Okay, level 11, and we are a Sorcerer 2 now. This gives us access to the other incredible Sorcerer feature, Metamagic. We get 2 sorcery points to spend on Metamagic, and we get the Create Sorcery Points feature, allowing us to convert our spell slots into sorcery points. This means for our bonus action, we can get some sorcery points back in combat or otherwise to use some devastating effects. Important note here, while we get 2 sorcery points back per long rest, that does not mean our maximum is 2. The Create Sorcery Points ability gives you sorcery points based on the spell slots sacrificed. See where I'm going here? 5th level spell slot sacrificed, 5 sorcery points. This is important with the first of these metamagic effects, which is Twin Spell, allowing us to use spells that only target 1 creature to hit 2 creatures instead at the cost of 1 sorcery point per spell level. The second is Extended Spell. This doubles the duration of conditions and surfaces caused by spells. Fantastic for use on control spells. There are a lot of great combos here with these two. Double Haste, Double Polymorph, double 6th level Chromatic Orb, 20 turn duration slow or haste. Awesome stuff. Finally, on level 12, we gain 1 final level in Sorcerer, 1 more sorcery point, and a difficult decision. We get 1 more metamagic option, and on our final level, we have to choose between Heightened Spell and Quickened Spell. Heightened Spell imposes disadvantage on targets of a spell that requires a saving throw. This is ideal for a control-based build, making your enemies much more likely to fail. Especially at this high level, it becomes even more valuable. Quickened Spell, on the other hand, lets you cast a spell with your bonus action, then another spell with your action, casting 2 spells in the same turn, damaging and ceasing afterwards. I'll leave this decision up to you and whatever you value more. And that's that. This build has been an absolute blast to create and test out. I've found so many neat interactions and really value upcasting more than ever before. Control on the battlefield is so potent and can often win a fight for you before it even begins, especially on Tactician. Don't forget the neat little interactions as well with things like Arcane Lock. Now, this isn't really an optimization suggestion and more of a neat change I might make to the build if I was making it again. So if you wanted to play more of a Sorcerer build and less of a Wizard, it's definitely possible. You basically trade your level 6 Divination feature for the level 6 Wild Magic Sorcerer feature, Bend Luck, which allows you to spend sorcery points and your reaction to add or remove a d4 from an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. Similar to the theme of the build, except you skip on the Expert Divination's short rest prophecies. If you go this route, I would recommend 1 level in Cleric, 3 in Wizard, and 8 in Sorcerer, getting Portent and level 2 utility spells in Wizard, 8 sorcery points, Tides of Chaos, Wild Magic, and level 4 spells in Sorcerer. You also gain access to all of your spells, not needing to prepare them, and having the ability to swap out lower level spells that are now being overshadowed. I think this might even be a stronger option, gaining the Lucky Feat earlier at level 4, and passing more speech skill checks as you are a charisma based caster now. Either way, thanks for checking out the build. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and sorry this build was a day or two late. I was pretty sick over the weekend. If you're looking for another awesome build to play, check out this one, and until next time, see ya!